Jackson's Sports Academy Parent Forum. Due to the weather overnight, our bathrooms are not available in the hall. If you need to use a bathroom, please head out back and a staff member will direct you. I would like to acknowledge and recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as the First Nations people of Australia, and that they are the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waterways throughout our country. Henley High School is on Kaurna land. I pay my respects to the Kaurna people, the elders both past and present, and their spiritual relationship with the country. Special guests Adrian, Ash, Sen, parents, caregivers, staff and students. My name is Merve, and along with me, Charlie and Lauren are your MCs for this evening. Throughout the evening, you can ask questions to our guest presenters on Slido. The link was emailed to you yesterday. Please feel free to log on at app.slide.do and enter the code 3237661. Questions are anonymous, but everyone will be able to see the questions asked. We will pick a couple of questions at the end of the night, and our special guests will answer them. I would now like to introduce Ms. Samina, Henley High School's Director for Sport, to give you an insight on how we got here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. It's very exciting to see you all here tonight, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight of how we got here. So back in 2021, as a school, we reviewed our strategic plans and our strategic direction. And through this process, we realised that as a school, we wanted to have 4 strategic plans. So for our strategic plans, we wanted to have one under culture and community, resources and systems, curriculum and learning, and wellbeing and inclusion. And so for each of these 4 strategic plans across our entire school, the Sports Academy actually doesn't fit into one of those, it fits into those 4 strategic plans. And so what we have done is we've got a goal now for each of those areas, and sometimes we've got 2 goals. And I guess what also helped us come to the conclusion of what our goals would be is we went to our students, our parents, the community, and we also got a range of feedback on our Sports Academy of what we were doing well, but maybe what our growth areas were. So under curriculum and learning, I guess as a whole school we want to build our students' capabilities. Within the Sports Academy we feel that the capabilities that best fits us develop with our students are personal and social capability, intercultural understanding and ethical understanding, and so we're looking to work with those with the students across the school. Under inclusion and wellbeing, we want to obviously help our students be successful by developing their positive mental health strategies. And so we're really fortunate tonight that we've got Ash Manuel here from Growing with Gratitude, and he's been working with our academy students this year to help them learn to how they can have positive mental health strategies. And so they've been working on gratitude, empathy, having self-awareness and taking ownership. And then if they can do that and have a positive mental health, that's only going to help them not only in their schooling, but their sport and outside of school. And so that's obviously really important, and we're lucky to have Ash here tonight to share what he's been doing with our students. The next one is resources and systems. So again, this comes really from strongly through our parent and student feedback. We have 10 sports academies, so we have about 430 students across those 10 sports. And something that I guess we're striving for across all of those is to have a little bit more consistency. And so every sports academy have trial game opportunities or performance opportunities. Every sports academy has a range of specialist coaches that come in and work with the students. Also, obviously COVID put this on hold for a little while, but now we're wanting to bring back intrastate and interstate travel opportunities for our students. So this year we've already brought those back, and we're trying to have every academy have a travel opportunity. So in term 1 this year, our basketball, netball and tennis academies went to Melbourne. We also had our hockey academy go down to Mount Gambier and do an exchange down there. We've got football and soccer also looking to go to Queensland next term, so there's many exciting opportunities that are available for our Sports Academy students, and we're striving for all our 10 Sports Academies to have those opportunities. The next one is obviously we want to enhance our play spaces. So you can probably see at the moment with the weather, this facility here obviously has a little bit of damage with the water. I'm not sure if you've seen our oval today, but that's pretty much like a swimming pool. And so I guess we want to enhance the facilities we've got available not only to our Sports Academy students, but we also want to enhance the availability to our PE students, supported learning centre students, but also our community. And so as a school, when the Year 7s become part of high school, we actually got a high performance sports centre, so that's a cardio and weights facility that's got state-of-the-art equipment in there now, and so that's available for our students to use, not only Sports Academy but PE students. And I guess our next goal would be ultimately to have the full court stadium across the road, because that would allow a number of our programs, especially the Basketball Academy, not to travel off-site, but also it would be a great resource for our school to use, but also our community use. So we've got that plan in place. We just haven't quite come across the money yet to be able to do that, but we're working towards that. The next thing though, I guess in the interim, what we're really trying to achieve is we want to resurface the courts in the middle of our school, and again at the moment they've only got basketball lines on that, and so they're very tired and we want to work towards getting those resurfaced, and so we've got some plans in place. So coming up we have got the Office of Sport and Recreation. We're going to put in an application to try and get that resurfaced, and then that would enable us not only to have basketball in those courts, but it would also allow us to have netball, tennis, volleyball, and that will enable us to increase our engagement as a school, but also with the community user groups using that space. And so Chaplain Stanley's done a huge amount of work, who is our assistant principal HMPE coordinator, and he's actually working with our marketing team, has come up with a platform where we're going to be seeking to try and raise $100,000 for our court resurfacing. And so that's through the Australian Sports Foundation. It'll be shared on our Facebook very soon, and so if you know any companies or any businesses that would be willing to donate, you will obviously go to a great cause. And so that's something we're working through moving forward in the coming future. And lastly, culture and community. So as a school, we wanted to start by reviewing our staff culture in the sports department and in the Sports Academy. We have a really good staff culture. Obviously people are here teaching a sport of their passion, so they're very lucky, but we want to have an excellent staff culture. So we reviewed that last year. We've got some goals moving forward that we're working on this year. And lastly, and I guess this is how we got here tonight, that we realised when we went through this review process, we've got great relationships with our student athletes, but we want to engage our parents a little bit more and build that partnership with you, so our students can be successful on their journey through life, not only academically but also sportingly as well. And so that's why tonight is one of our first parent forums, where we've got fantastic guest presenters that will hopefully give you tools and strategies that you can use to help you with your child's journey. Tomorrow we will be sending out a survey, so we'd love your feedback to make this even better, because we'd love to make this an annual event that we can have on our calendar. Thank you, and that's all for me. I'll hand over to Lauren.
Thank you, Ms. Nutt. We would now like to welcome Sam Elliott to the stage. Sam is Flinders University's Associate Professor and Researcher in Sports Psychology, Coaching and Youth Sport. Sam is an Associate Professor and leading authority in the field of sport parenting, participation and retention, and physiosocial outcomes in youth sport. He has been invited to present his work internationally in Australia, China, UK, Canada, and the US. He is a multiple award-winning academic, including the prestigious essay Young Tall Poppy Science Award, Flinders VC Award for Early Career Research, the World Congress on Science and Football Best Research Paper by Code Award, and the Universities Australia Award for the Pitch It Clever competition. He He has also received the Vice Chancellor's Award for Innovation in Teaching and consecutive College Excellence in Teaching Awards. Sam is a science communication leader representing Flinders at the Australian Academy of Science Falling Walls Lab Australia and in the global award-winning series Raising the Bar. He is also the creator and co-host of Beyond the Club, Australia's leading science communication podcast for community sport. At Flinders, he holds leadership positions as Higher Degree Research Advisor in Education and Sport, Course Coordinator of the Graduate Diploma of Research Methods, and the Graduate Certificate of Sports Coaching. Sam also supervises 10 PhD students in his Children and Youth Sports Research Lab. He is also a Deputy Director of the Flinders Institute for Mental Health and Wellbeing and a member of the SHAPE Research Centre. Thank you for being with us tonight, Sam Elliott.
Excellent, thank you for the introduction, and it's lovely to be here. I think it's such a fantastic initiative that Henley High School have instigated with this parent community. It's a great honour to be here. My presentation tonight, from the backyard to the big time, and so regardless of whether your child is just starting out in sport or perhaps they are well into a pathway of their development, my goal tonight, and this is really the level that I hold myself to account to, is that you leave today with some tips that you can use with immediacy, that you can use tonight, that you can use this weekend. And if you don't, then you need to let Sam know, and then she'll let me know, I'm sure. But that's really the goal for me tonight. So it's a pleasure to be here. Just to begin with, I'd also like to begin by acknowledging, I think we can turn this one on. Excellent. Okay, just acknowledging the country. So certainly from myself and on behalf of Flinders, we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which our campuses are located, and these are the traditional lands of the Arrernte, the Dagomam, the First Nations of the Southeast, the First Peoples of the River, Murray and Mallee region, the Jamoin, the Kaurna, the Larrakia, and the Ngurindjeri, the Ngadjinjeri, the Raminjeri, the Warramungu, the Waterman and the Yolngu people, and of course we honour their elders past, present and emerging. I guess tonight I want to have a conversation about, of course, the topic of parents and sport. And when I've had this conversation for the last 12 years, everyone has a story about parenting in sport. And so I'd like to maybe use that as a point of departure to talk about why this is so important. And thanks to Sam and the team here at Henley, I think what's going to happen on the back of certainly this evening is that you guys are going to be more equipped to really optimise the level of your involvement. And I use that word intentionally, optimise, because it's not really the case that parents intentionally want to ruin children's sport or to undermine their experiences, and often forms of involvement are well-intentioned. So if we can just start from that point and say the things that you're doing are amazing, keep doing them, and if we can just improve them a bit more, then you'll see some of the outcomes that can come from that. At the same time, if we ignore this opportunity, then what the research tells us is that parents that learn on the job, that through trial and error experience, do pose a risk to children and youth sport. So what do we know? Well, we know that about 1.5% of all sideline comments from parents are aimed at coaches. That doesn't necessarily mean they're good or bad comments, but they are aimed at coaches. And you think of how many verbalisations may happen in a game of, say, football. I'm a coach at the South Adelaide Football Club. If you were to measure every verbal comment from the sideline from every adult, you can see that there's literally thousands of verbalisations. So 1.5% might actually represent, potentially several comments across the course of the game. Around 30% of parents will put their hand up and say, yep, I'm someone that actually has demonstrated aggressive behaviour during the course of a game. And about 15% of parents will also say, look, I've been involved in a conflict with an umpire. And so what the research tells us is those numbers are quite concerning, because often when it comes to self-reporting behaviour like this, that there tends to be an underreported antecedents. So that's certainly a concern. Those numbers are conservative, if anything. We also know that children, about 1 in 5 children don't want mum or dad to attend games. What a sad commentary. I think a lot of families, I can see here tonight, probably get a lot of enjoyment from watching your child play sport. And so for you, we don't want to minimise that. We want to try and find ways to make sure that you're included in that experience. But the research tells us, again, if you look around, every fifth chair, there's a child in this room that doesn't want mum or dad to be involved on game day. More concerningly, about 30% of young people in Australia, and this is taken from a very recent study, has found that around 30% of young people have experienced psychological abuse at the hands of their parents. That is a direct association, and so one of the concerns is that A, it's in community sport, 2, it's in Australia, 3, that paper was published as recently as last year. So we'd be kidding ourselves to think that this isn't an issue, and it's actually led to a current study that I'm leading, which I'll talk about later. By the numbers, we also know that when you code every verbalisation from the sideline, when you combine negative and instructional comments, it equates to about 40% of all verbalisations from the sideline. I know it's meant to be me talking for a bit, but just really quickly, why might we combine negative with instructional comments? Does anyone want to have a guess? No?
How they're perceived?
Yeah, good. So sometimes instructional comments that are well-intentioned from mum or dad can still have a negative consequence. It could be a moment of heightened state anxiety, as just one example. It could create confusion. It could be a source of embarrassment. So we just want to be careful with how we look at that. But as a combined number, 15 to 40%. 15 is around the negative, but there are some studies which have shown a combined impact of 40%. And this is the final number I want to sort of, I guess, highlight. So it's a study that I've contributed with some colleagues around the globe, and we've actually looked at sideline behaviour, and we've surveyed and then followed up with interviews, and then we undertook, I think, 400 hours of field observations. And what we actually found is that young people, about 86% of young people, can not only report at least one incident of sideline parenting behaviour, which in their experience was negative, but at least 2 to 5 times. So when parents learn on the job, when we let parents sort it out, they should know it's common sense. What we actually see is that there is a real risk there. And so I guess with that, my goal tonight is to provide some ideas or some principles that can hopefully enhance your experience, make the journey a little less turbulent, and hopefully much more enjoyable for the family unit. So we'll get into it. There is a slight delay here, but I'm just going to work through it. Okay, so principle number 1. I've got 10 of these, so bear with me. You can tick these off and hopefully we stick within the time limit. Lesson number 1, delay and diversify. So I want to strip this right back. If you had a child born tomorrow and you wanted to know how you can actually get them set to make sure they have the full benefit, the full psychosocial, developmental benefits of sport, the first lesson here is to make sure that when they enter sport, that we want to promote a diversified experience. So what does that mean? It means the opportunity to sample a range of different sports, but it's not just anything and everything. There's certainly some science around this, that sampling can occur within sports, so trying different positions, but more to the point, sampling similar sports of what we might call a category. So our footballers at South just want to play football and be drafted to the AFL, and we encourage them, even at the under 16, under 18 level, while their commitment is important, that they need to maintain some diversified experiences. It might not be going playing golf, but if you look at the same categorisation of football, soccer, basketball, these other games where there is inevitably attack and defence, the learning of transition, that's something that we want to encourage. So if we strip this right back to say 5 or 6 years of age, okay, the first lesson there is to actually delay. Okay, the research actually shows that if a child starts organised sport, not modified sport, organised sport from 4 or 5 years of age, that within a 6-year period, 70% of those children are not involved in that same sport. And you can probably relate to that. Think of the sports you were playing between 5 and 10 years of age, probably not the same sports you were playing when you were probably 10 to 15. There's naturally an artificial form of dropout from specific sports. This is a pathway that children normally go through, sampling, specialisation, investment, and it's really to represent the wide variety of sports that children sample from a young age, and then as they get to about 12 to 15, they begin to consolidate their involvement into maybe 1 or 2 choice sports. In a high school, you probably see that a lot, where children start to make decisions about really where they want to go with their sport. And then finally, in that 15 to 18 years, typically they invest, and what investment really looks like is, if you like, an intrinsic form of motivation to self-start that behaviour. They don't necessarily need mum or dad to remind them of the importance of sport and the opportunities, the parent role changes, but that's a typical model. So if you can delay that sampling, like we don't want to get children in at 4 or 5 necessarily, we can delay that for as long as we can. That's always a good thing. And also delay the point at which they start to just focus on one sport. The research shows that that's actually going to accelerate their ability to develop talent. It's also going to have strong psychosocial outcomes. So for one example, if you want to see more resilient young children, this is actually a strong correlate of that outcome. Of course, there are recreational phases as well we need to acknowledge, and the Leighton Hewitt, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods of the world, that early specialisation, it's a very small minority that actually succeed through that pathway. So this dark blue phase here, really, really important. Key ideas, firstly, the attainment of expertise. So to become expert, to become the best performer in your sport, you do not need to specialise early, and you do not need to start early. And in fact, what we know is that in terms of continuation behaviour, so if your child is at risk of dropping out or withdrawal for whatever reason, the way in which you can actually arrest that is to delay their start and to actually diversify their sampling. That's the trying of different sports from the outset. So really important lesson 1 there, delay and diversify. Okay, number 2, fun. Show of hands, how many parents have said to their child, it doesn't matter if you win or lose as long as you have fun? Who said that before? I think most people would have. If you haven't put your hand up, I'd be surprised. And it's a fair philosophy of sport because there's a lot of scientific rigour behind the idea that fun as an experience matters. But do we know why? And one of the things that we know is that the number one fuel for continuation in sport is that intrinsic experience, which we call fun. But what do we actually mean? What does it actually look like? And I reckon if we surveyed the room here, just adults, I reckon we'd come up with a list of things that we think are fun. There's actually been a lot of research on this. One of my PhD students has done some work on this, and certainly building on one of my colleagues in the US, who's done a lot of work on mapping what fun actually is, has identified not 1 and not 2 and not even 5, but 81 determinants of fun. So if you're in a local footy club, netball club, whatever it might be, it's worth thinking about whether you're just scratching the surface right now of how fun your sport would be, or whether there's a real opportunity to maximise the experience. A very quick shameless plug here. I do have a podcast called Beyond the Club, and we're actually unpacking these 5 at a time to really not only talk about what they are, but what they could actually look like in sport. So when we say, are you having fun? It doesn't matter as long as you have fun. Do we actually even know what we're talking about in its most comprehensive sense? It's definitely something that I think is an untapped resource to keep children in sport. Okay, so number 2, fun. What do we actually mean? Number 3, okay, read the room, or more importantly, read the car ride home. I've done a lot of research a couple of years ago in this particular space, and it's something that I'm sure for every family from time to time is a topic of conversation, or certainly a point of contention. What do we actually know? Well, we know that the drive home is a captive space. It's a captive space where the power relationship between adult and child is fixed and is really hard to actually, if you navigate or negotiate the roles between parent and child. And so if there are any forms of conflictual nature between parent and child, it can often be exacerbated in this particular setting, even without saying a word. So the setting actually matters. The second thing we know in the research is that when you attempt to sandwich criticism, so Sam, you played really well today, I love that you did this, I loved what you played, etc., but, okay, or however, or you could have done this better, because parents have an inclination to want their child to improve. And so what we actually find is that it doesn't matter where you hide your criticism, your constructive feedback in the conversation, it is certainly a marker of heightened anxiety, negative emotional distress for the child. Now that's not to say you shouldn't give feedback. That's certainly not the lesson here. It's not saying, Sam said don't give feedback in the car. What I'm saying is that there needs to be some consideration about how we read the room in this space. So some ideas. Number 1, context matters. So if you are compelled to say something as a parent, then just consider the timing and even the frequency of when you have that conversation. Could it happen at home? Could it happen the next day? Could it happen during the week? And so you might be able to try and consider whether your timing and frequency is helping your relationship and importantly helping the child develop. My animations here are better, right? But that's okay. Have we set up a psychologically safe environment for debriefing? So have you actually laid the groundwork before season actually starts and say, hey Sam, do you want to actually have a conversation after the game? Okay, and often the answer might be, yeah, sure, let's do that. And I think you can take it a step further and consider, okay, well, what are the machinations around that will protect the child and protect the adult in that situation? Because, of course, at the end of sport, it can be quite a highly emotive experience. So try to find ways to set up expectations and preferences, not just of yourself, because it's important that you feel heard in this experience, but also the child as well. Okay, so that's certainly another key idea. And the third one here is, do we actually prompt? Do we ask questions, or do we tell them, you could have done this better, you didn't do that, your coach said do this and you didn't, versus how did you go today? What were your goals pre-game? How do you think you fared in trying to achieve them? And sometimes the prompting or telling is a really, really important tool for parents that maybe are compelled to say something, and they can actually have the conversation in a much safer environment. So certainly read the room in the car ride home. Key ideas, context matters, do we prompt or tell, and have you actually set up the conversation for it to succeed? Number 4, okay, so we're working through these. Wearing 2 hats. Does anyone here, or has anyone here coached their child or their child's team before? Okay, so probably 20%. Okay, so this is probably more for you guys as much as anything, but this is a difficult role. Being the parent and the coach is actually really difficult. And so again, there's been some research on this that I've led about 4 or 5 years ago now. Just a couple of things that we want to highlight. That in this role, it's actually really important to recognise that parents are thrust into this dual role, wearing 2 hats, where the display of differential treatment, differential behaviour towards their child is a real thing. And so what parents often do is, Sam, I'm going to treat you harder this year because of one fear, and that one fear is that parents don't want to be perceived to favour their child. Okay, and so typically it's an understandable reaction, but I think you've got to ask yourself, well, what are the consequences of that? And certainly in my research, there's certainly profound consequences for sustained engagement in sport. So this type of relationship, if not addressed, actually permits criticism as distinct from constructive feedback. It can limit opportunities. So for example, Sam may have been the best player on the ground, but he's still not getting any acknowledgement because of this particular fear. And of course, limited recognition as well. And so these might be things, with representative teams, interleague carnivals, these kinds of things as well. So of course, this heightens the need for you in these roles as parent coaches to establish some expectations and some boundaries from day one. Now that's not always easy, because often we may know the sport and we are motivated to be involved in our children's sport, but what do we actually mean by established boundaries and established expectations? Well, they are not just with the club or with the organisation, but they are actually with your child. So do you collaboratively discuss, collaboratively meaning in partnership, discuss your expectations and preferences? Sam, how would you feel this year if from time to time I made an example of you when things aren't working out in our gameplay? How can I actually do that so you become a really useful part of our team's development? So collectively discuss your expectations and preferences is key from day one. Okay, so again, it's setting the psychologically safe environment for you to succeed in this dual role. You may also seek educational support from the club or the organisation. My sense is that the club or the organisation may not have a lot of resources, but it's certainly worth asking anyway. There may have been a parent in that role the previous year and can provide you some advice so you can navigate that terrain with a bit more success. So certainly some things there. The last one here is to maybe just enhance the transparency about the process. Okay, and so this might be things about selection or about opportunity or about playing time, and addressing that from day one, which I'm sure that most organisations do quite well. So wearing 2 hats is hard. The advice there, set your boundaries from day one and make sure that it's a collaborative exchange with your child. I love this one, number 5. So help your child identify their superpower. So what do I mean by that? This is about your child when they have a decline in confidence, or maybe there's a knock to their self-belief. What do you do to get them back on the horse? And a lot of parents would probably say, just, you'll be right, keep going, or, whatever it might be. There's actually a lot of scientific research about this and the importance of identifying a signature strength, or what we might call your source of mastery. Okay, you can just call it your superpower. So why does this matter? Well, firstly, we know that when you actually have an identifiable strength as an athlete, it actually enhances your perceptions of competence, okay? So your belief that you're actually good at doing something. Why does that matter? Well, we know that it is inextricably linked with self-determined motivation. So if you want a child that is a self-starter, someone that actually gets up in the morning and gets going, doesn't have to be for sport, just going to school or doing their homework. If you want a child that starts without you having to prompt them or without the environment needing to influence their behaviour, then we want to try and enhance their perception of competence. So that's really, really important. Number two, superpowers are a way, it's the single quickest way to rebuild self-confidence. And so we see this a lot, in our coaching at South Adelaide, but again across all achievement domains. Higher education is one example. My students that do not believe they can do an exam or an assignment, and we need to find out what they are actually good at. What's the thing that when everything else around them is in chaos, that they can hold on to? And that tends to be their superpower, the thing that makes them who they are as an athlete, as a young person. Really, really important. That in itself promotes sense of control and autonomy, which is again a marker for building motivation. We also know that it's associated, so your superpower, your strength is associated with the cultivation of resilience, and it doesn't matter if it's an actual strength or if it's a perceived strength. So there's certainly a lot of science in this space, and in both spaces, actual and perceived competence matters. And then finally, we also know that a strength, a weapon as an athlete, is actually associated with enjoyment. If you're good at something, even in tennis, I might be losing every set. I'm 5-4 down in the first set, second set, third set, but I'm still in the game because I've got a weapon. It might be my first serve. That might be the only thing I've got, but it keeps me in the game. And that's actually quite an enjoyable part of challenge, that you've still got something that allows you an opportunity to succeed. So help your children identify their superpower. There's probably a parent out there that might be thinking, geez, my child's really good at a lot of things, but they don't excel at one thing. So as an athlete, they're good at this, good at this, good at this, good at this. They are 7 out of 10 across the board. That's one of the most challenging situations. You need to help them develop or identify an actual or perceived strength that is a 10 out of 10 strength. Okay, super important. Bit of a delay here, but that's okay. Now, number 6, okay, so we're getting there. Identify your stresses. So this is directly for mums and dads in the room. To identify your stresses and have plans to manage them. So the research in the field of sport parenting, it's a 70-year scientific field in sports psychology. A lot of research globally. What we've actually identified in a review that we published a couple of years ago was that there were 3 domains of stress for parents. And so some of these are organisational. They might be things like my child's not getting a lot of playing time. Sometimes they're things like developmental. It's like my child's spending too much time in sport and not enough time in school. That can be a stressor for families as well. And of course there can be a range of competitive stressors. It could be just simply the occasion of a grand final, or my child's finally been selected and I want them to take their opportunity because you know how much it means to them. These are very real stresses for families, and obviously, if left unchecked or mismanaged, have the potential to provoke the kind of behaviours which might undermine the experience, to put it one way. So what can you actually do? Well, there's a range of strategies. I've just highlighted a few tonight to just give you a sample of things that we could do. Number 1, if, for example, you as a mum or dad going to training or games experience heightened levels of emotion, really unstable levels of nervousness or apprehension or worry. As a stressor, that's really difficult to navigate, and so it's not an ideal strategy, but can you maybe share the attendance? It's like, Sam, you go this week, I'll go next week, and then it's literally a way of actually reducing your exposure to an environment that is provoking a heightened level of stressor for you. So that's certainly one solution. Another one might be to adopt a perspective-taking approach. And so this is where you might simply disagree with an umpiring decision, and then literally 30 seconds later, disagree with the next one. So there's a compounding emotional effect that you're experiencing. And so in those moments, it might be worth just trying to find ways to take perspective. Does this decision right now actually matter in the grand scheme? And so the lesson here is about zooming out from sport temporarily and thinking about relationships, finances, work, health, all these other things that really do matter, and whether this one incident that has caused you a stressor is actually weighted or more significant than the example that you level. So perspective taking is really, really important, and it's actually a really effective strategy in the short term. Can parents seek support from other parents? One of the things I love about youth sport is the learning of self-compassion, and one of the key things of self-compassion is this notion of connectedness, of common humanity, that the very stress that you're going through because your child has been deselected or your child's just done an ACL, as traumatic as that can be, knowing that there are other people that have been in this situation before. And so a common humanity, seeking support from other parents, is also a very useful tool. And then finally, this notion, as I've just mentioned, of self-compassion. So can we just be maybe kind to ourselves? If your child's sport isn't working out the way that you want, it's not a reflection on you, and I'll build to that point in a moment. It's not solely a reflection on you. And so can we practice being a little bit more self-kind to ourselves as parents? It's a tough gig. The last thing we want many of the times is more advice on how to be a parent. And so maybe it's just an opportunity to say, hey, you get it right a lot of the time. I'm certainly learning that now with a couple of young kids, and it's certainly an important message for everyone. So that's number 6, identify your stresses, have a plan, have some plans to try and manage them. Number 7, do it your way. Parent however you want, but just be informed about what the science tells us. So typically, when we study parenting styles, there are 2 different types of, if you like, variables that we consider. How responsive we are as a parent. If my child falls over, do I attend to them or do I ignore them? That's responsiveness. And demandingness, okay? So are we asking a lot of our child, or are we asking nothing from them at all? So when you look at these 2 trajectories, these 2 variables, what we actually know in the research is that there's certainly a type of parenting style which is associated with being high or low in these areas. So let's just have a look at these. Neglectful parenting. This is typically those dynamics that display a low level of demand. So mum and dad don't really ask anything of their child, and they are very low in responsiveness. Okay, so that's typically where you see cases of severe neglect. If you are an authoritarian type of parenting style, you are really high in demand. So Sam needs to do this, clean your room, do this, do that, do that. It's a very high demand relationship, and there's a very low level of emotional responsiveness. So that's one that we typically see through generations, and one that is potentially one of the more popular parenting styles that we often see in society and culture. The other one is indulgent. So this is a type of parent that may be low in demand. So they don't really ask too much of their child. There's not a lot of rules per se, but they might be very responsive to the child. So if the child asks a question, or if a child wants something, mum and dad are highly responsive to those types of requests. So these are, very typical parenting styles. The fourth one I'm going to highlight, I'm going to preface by saying this is where the research strongly indicates that for child development in sport, you're going to see the best outcome. And so this is where you are generally a parenting dynamic, so it's not just a mum or dad thing, but a parenting dynamic where there is a higher level of authoritative parenting style. So what does that look like? Well, typically there is a high level of demand with a high level of responsiveness. Now, high doesn't mean every single time you see your child that you need to ask them to do something, okay? But it's just saying that there's certainly a level of demandingness that's matched equally with a high level of emotional responsiveness, okay? So that's really an interesting conversation for me tonight to present. The lesson here is this: you guys, in all the walks of life that you're currently working through, do your family parenting style your own way, okay? Whatever works for you, do it. But just be aware of what the research tells us, that authoritative parenting style is associated with accelerated outcomes in youth sport. Number 7, do it your way. Okay, number 8, I think I'm doing okay for time here, Sam, but I'll keep moving through. Adapt, don't decrease your involvement. So one of the mistakes or the errors that a lot of parents make is that once children are of a certain age, and it might be even as you get through high school, that mum and dad feel like, you know what, my job's done, I'll take a back seat, I'm no longer needed, the coach knows more, I'll just be over here. And what the research tells us, there's a huge body of literature on this notion called parenting expertise in sport, and what it basically suggests is that if you adapt your involvement, it might not be that you are now the go-to person for advice on how to kick a ball or to catch a ball, but if you adapt your involvement, so change the way in which you contribute to children's sport and development, then that's actually going to be most conducive for your child. It's not just psychosocial, but performative dimensions of sport as well. In other words, they are a better player for that. If you reduce your involvement altogether, you're actually taking away a really important source of enjoyment, which I can speak to later, but you're also taking away a lot of their other surroundings that psychosocially are important for developing resilience, confidence, motivation. So adapt, don't decrease your involvement. What does that look like? Maybe continue to develop goals together. Don't let children work out their own goals. Sometimes that can be actually misguided. So work with them to collaboratively build goals together and then make sure you revisit them. That's one example of adapting your involvement. Talking to your child about what they'd like to do at trainings and competitions or games on the weekend. So playing in that space is a way of adapting your involvement as well. And of course, a flexible approach to each week. Some weeks you might not need to say too much to your child, but there are other weeks where it's actually a really important opportunity to just check in and lean into that conversation. So being flexible rather than adopting one style of support is actually shown to be most beneficial. So adapt, don't decrease your involvement in sport. Okay, I'm doing really well, there's only 2 to go, and I'm conscious of time as well. So number 9, create a psychologically safe home environment. So this is specific to sport. I'm not talking about school or anything else. I'm talking specific in sport. Why does this matter? Well, I'm just going to highlight 3 things from a really troubling paper that was published last year. I'll reference it off the top here. In Australian community sport, so it's not pathways, it's not overseas, and it's not from 10 years ago. This is as recently as 12 months ago in community sport in Australia. About 76% of young people have experienced psychological violence. About 66% have experienced physical violence, and about 38% have experienced sexual violence. Now, we could unpack a lot of these things, but what I want to highlight is this first one where most young people experience, it's 3 in 4, experience some form of psychological violence. So the question here is really, are we setting ourselves up to create a psychologically safe environment? I am leading a study at the moment with some colleagues at UniSA and Victoria University to look at the impact of this. Now we know that parent psychological abuse is happening, we want to know whether it's having some long-term impact. And without going too far into the findings at this stage, it's a pretty seismic piece of work that we're undertaking. So the point here, without giving you too much more information, is really thinking about what are the conditions in which children learn to or are invited into conversation about goal setting, about concerns they might have about their development, of which there are many across the journey, and making sure that we've set up that environment for when those times do occur. And then number 10, the last point, so I'm really winding things up now. Just remember that as parents, you are just one cog in an entire system of youth sport development. So if your child makes it to the AFL, or if they don't make it and they drop out, it's not a sole indication of you as mums or dads. There is a very intricate and dynamic experience that is happening in their youth sport journey, and we don't need to unpack this model, but I just want to highlight 2 things. Number 1, that dotted yellow line there highlights a family subsystem, and it's usually of siblings of the athlete and of the parents, and it tends to interact with another subsystem, and that's the team subsystem with the athlete, that's your child, with their peers and with the coach. And it doesn't just finish there, there's a 3rd layer that interacts. That's why these cogs are quite symbolic, where the environment around them influences behaviours, attitudes, expectations as well. So the term interconnectedness is really just a way of promoting, if you like, an understanding that studying parenting and giving you advice in and of itself in a siloed vacuum is actually not useful. We need to maybe just sort of zoom out for a moment and recognise that you are just one piece of a much more complex environment. So I can elaborate on these points, but I'm just conscious of the time. So the lesson there, you're just one cog, a very important cog. Your contribution is enormous, but you are just one cog. So if it doesn't work out, try not to be too hard on yourself. If it does work out, feel fantastic about what's happened, but at the same time, it's attributed to a much larger macro system of influence. So in closing, I'm going to try and do my best to just pull this together in sort of a few points here. Number 1, if you were to take anything from tonight, just understand and appreciate that what you do as parents is valuable, but it is complex. Okay, it's never an easy stretch, and it is an intricate social experience, especially if you've got siblings. There's lots of research on that. Learning through trial and error espouses risk. So don't just think that you know what to do, because as I've highlighted tonight, there's certainly some strategies that you might take to actually improve and optimise the way in which you support your child in sport. Number 3, clubs and organisations. I don't know if anyone in here is the leader, a CEO or a president of a club, whatever it might be. But we really need to work with parents rather than on or against them from the outset. So there's certainly a lot of work that I've led in that space. Number 4, flexible, appropriate and timely parenting support is absolutely critical, and it's a really key part of becoming what we consider parenting expertise. And then number 5, in everything that you do, zoom in and zoom out regularly. It's not just a message around reflection, it's active participation in reflection and growth with your child. So really, hopefully that's of use for tonight. I know a lot of information, but hopefully that's resonated on some degree or on some level with you all. So thank you for your time, and I'll hand over to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I found your insights regarding the 10 steps for parents to support their kids really interesting, and I suspect our audience did too. At this time of the evening, we would like to remind you about asking any questions you have using the Slido tool. You can find the link and the code written on the whiteboard on the western wall. It has been 25 years since the Sports Academy was introduced at Henley High School in 1998. We are really proud of our history, growth and development over this time. We are going to be doing a 25-year beanie fundraiser, and the funds will go towards the core resurfacing in the middle of the school. If you would like to purchase a 25-year beanie, they are sold on the Quikr app for $25. We will be closing this on Friday, 30th of June. We will be holding a 25-year celebration at our annual Sports Academy and school sport presentation in Term 4. We would like to invite all parents, friends to this event, and more information will come out closer to the event.
We would now like to welcome Ash Manuel to the stage, founder of Growing with Gratitude. In 2010, while teaching as a primary school PE teacher in Adelaide, Ash discovered a number of people who excelled in their chosen field, identified gratitude and happiness as the key to their success and achievement. Through further investigation, he discovered an entire world he didn't know existed. This was the world of positive psychology. His greatest learning was that resilience and happiness is something you can actually practice. After personal breakthroughs in his own life, he realised he could have learnt the skills he developed in primary school. Ash left primary school teaching and decided to combine his skills as a teacher with the principles he learned that led to his breakthroughs and created Growing with Gratitude, a global positive education and wellbeing program that helps to build and protect children's mental wellbeing. Since 2014, Ash has been obsessed with helping young people learn skills that help them adapt in an ever-changing world and help them to move forward from challenges. Ash focuses on teaching people skills based on gratitude, kindness, empathy, self-awareness and ownership, which are the key building blocks to resilience and happiness. Today, he is widely regarded as a leader in positive education. Ash and Growing with Gratitude literally reaches hundreds of thousands of students across the globe and is currently accessed in 45 countries. Ash has been working with our Sports Academy students this year, and we thank you for being with us tonight, Ash Manuel.
Thanks, John. It's amazing how you can sound when you write your own bio, but appreciate you reading that out. So I just want everyone to check in how they're feeling. So -10, to be honest, you probably wouldn't be here because you're dealing with some kind of serious issue in your life and probably wouldn't be here at the moment. -5, maybe you just had a bad day, you just been in a bad mood. 0, not feeling alright, things aren't too bad. +5, had a great day, you're in a really good mood, things going well. And you got +10, things could not be better. You're up and about, you're having a great day, looking forward to the long weekend, and you're really excited. And then obviously everything in between. So you don't have to tell anyone, just think about where you are on that scale at the moment. Now, some of you may be in the pluses, maybe in the middle or minuses, but is it fair to say that sometimes that we will be in the minuses as human beings? We've got to have those days. Is that fair to say? Yeah. So, who is really the only person who can improve our mood, really, when it comes down to it? Who's your number one support system that you have? Yourself. So this is, yeah, right, Sam is a bit delay. It's yourself, it's you. So for me, this comes down to a really important skill. Self-awareness. So what is self-awareness to you guys? Just call some things out. What is it? No? Thank you, well done. Understanding your emotions, so understanding how you're feeling. Excellent, what else? We'll take one more. Who's going to be brave? Just yell something out. Sorry? Yeah, having the ability to change how you feel, yeah. So also, great answers, and thank you for responding. So, it's knowing your strengths and weaknesses also, what you're not so good at, what you are, or what you are good at and what you're not so good at. And that's relevant to sport as well, but life in general. So knowing your strengths in your sport, but also knowing what you're not so good at. And also, life in general, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Also knowing what people think of you. That's also self-awareness. So self-awareness, I reckon, is one of the most important skills we can have as a person. And the great thing about it, we can actually practice it. Now, if you thought you were coming in tonight and just sitting and listening and not moving, you're wrong. So, what's going to happen? We are going to get, just with the people around you, I know some people are probably here on their own, but see if you can join a group of 2 or 3. So, very short, we're actually going to stand up. I know you guys have been sitting for a while, and we're going to practice the self-awareness activity. So what's going to happen is a statement is going to come up on the screen. All right, if you're in a group of 3, you've got 10 seconds to respond to the statement. So this one says, what makes you happy? You've got 10 seconds each to share what makes you happy. If you're in a pair, you've got 15 seconds each. All right, so I'll give you 10 seconds to find a group of 2 or 3, and then I'll call the start, and we'll work through 5 or 6 of these. So standing up, stretch your legs, get a grip of group of 3. The first one is, I feel happy when, go. Next one is, what frustrates you when playing or watching sport? Playing or watching sport, what frustrates you? Go. Next one is, how do my teammates, if you're a student or you play sport, how do your teammates see you? Or if you're an adult here, how do your colleagues see you? Go. Next one is, we've got a couple to go. A strength of mine is, now it could be in sport, it could be in life in general. What's a strength of yours? Go. What are you good at? can get better at. What is something you are looking forward to? Go, what's something you're looking forward to? All right, guys, have a seat. Well done. So, you don't have to say anything, but you can nod or shake. Who had trouble answering any of those questions? Who had trouble? Yes, no? Yeah. So some of those could be easy for some people to answer, and maybe not so for others. Also, hopefully you got to know someone as well. So just reflecting then, well, what makes us happy, for example, what makes us angry? If we're self-aware of those things, these are really important skills to have, or what we can improve on. So that's the number one step, self-awareness. So if I'm having a bad day, as we said before, who's the only person who can improve our mood? Who is it? It's ourselves, exactly. So if we're having a bad day, that's the first step, understanding I'm not at my best. Now the next step is taking ownership. What is ownership in this context? Yeah? Not any problem? So being responsible. So if you are having a bad day, that's the first step. Understand that you're not at your best. Now the great thing about self-awareness, research tells us that it can help us make better decisions in challenging times. It can help us manage our emotions better. Also, it can help us be better leaders and build confidence as well. So it's such a powerful skill to have, and it's actually a gift to have self-awareness. So if our parents here can support our students, or your children really, seems a bit funny calling your children, but teenagers, it's a really powerful skill to have. And the next step is ownership, being responsible for what you do. So if you're having a bad day, it's up to us to improve our mood. Now, this is one of my favourite quotes about ownership. So this is a guy called Jocko Willink, hardcore Navy SEAL guy. He's written a book called Extreme Ownership. And he says there is no one else to blame. You must own your problems along with your solutions. So again, this could be taken in a whole lot of different ways. But again, to highlight the fact, if you're having a bad day, it's up to myself to improve it. So my question to you is, what is your mood shifter? What is that thing you do if you are having a bad day that you know works for you? You might be in -5. What is that thing that gets you back to a 0? Who has a mood shifter here? Put your hand up if you have a mood shifter. Does anybody want to pull theirs out? Music, excellent. Cup of tea.
Tennis.
Sorry? Tennis, sport, excellent. Well done. Gold star. Sorry? Swim, fantastic physical activity. Now, what works for me and what works for people in the room might not be the same. 2 weeks ago I was in Perth. We did this activity, we were talking about this with a group of teachers. And a lady put up her hand and said, my mood shifter is sitting on the back veranda watching my chickens. And I was waiting for more, but that was it. That was her mood shifter. So that won't work for me. But hey, it works for her. That's fine. Now, research tells us music, gratitude. I just want to put this slide on. That's my lovely partner back when I had the Maldives recently, so I was grateful for that experience. Thought I'd add that up there. Laughter. Also, physical activity, that one was, and connection. So being part of a team. Now, personally, my two, I've got a few, like music, love being around people, but my two, well, number one, without a doubt, is physical activity. That's my number one mood shifter. So I'm self-aware of that. Now, I don't have to be in a bad mood to exercise, of course. I love starting the day with physical activity because, and intense physical activity where you sort of bent over and you can't breathe, putting yourself through a really hard challenge. Because what that does for me, it sets me up for any challenges that comes across the day because I've done something physically hard to train my brain to do hard things. I love doing that every morning. Did it this morning. And I know if I have a bad day, same with -5, I know physical activity will get me back to a 0. I know that works for me. And the other one is gratitude. So reflecting on the things in my life that I can be grateful for, I love to think about gratitude in 4 areas of life. The opportunities we have, like the opportunity to be a part of the sports program, as an example, the experiences that we might have in our lives, the things that we might take for granted, like some of the real basic stuff, like having a bed to sleep in, having a school to come to, having teachers, having parents, having children. And also the other one is, it's got a bit of blank, the people in our life. The people in our life we can be grateful for. I like to think about those areas. And the great thing about something like skill like gratitude, we practice. So for me, gratitude is such an important skill, and I'll talk about how personally I use gratitude as a mood shifter shortly. Now, who's the number 2 support system that we've got in our lives? Who is it, do you reckon? Family? Yep. Pretty much other people. Other people could be teachers, could be coaches. I'll put up here your support. So as in parents, supporting your children. So if we can teach the first support system that we've got is ourselves, so young people here tonight, if you can understand that, you are your number 1 support system. And it starts with self-awareness. Understanding, okay, well, I'm not at my best at the moment. Taking ownership, what can I do to improve? And building that toolkit is really important to know what works for you. Now, it's the same with self-awareness in sport. Okay, what do I need to work on at the moment? What can I get better at? And taking ownership of it to improve. Because you're the only one who can do it. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about how I guess I came up. We had a little bit about the bio, but how I ended up being here tonight, really. So, I want you to think about adults in the room. When you're in your teenage years, and maybe through your early 20s, are you doing now what you wanted to? Did you have that dream that you wanted to achieve when you were in teenage years? Is anybody doing that now? No? Kind of? So, what are some of the things that you did want to do when you grow up in your teenage years? What were some of those things? Call them out. What do you want to be? Sailor? Fantastic. Anything else? Have children? Fantastic. You achieve that? Professional footballer, excellent. I was exactly the same. So for me, my obsession was sport. Now, some of you may be familiar with the Micken family. So my mum's side of the family is a Micken. So my uncle is Mark Micken. Was the first ever captain of the Brisbane Bears. The young people, there was a Brisbane Bears originally before they became the Lions. And then when the Crows came into the competition in '91, he came back to Adelaide and was the first ever for the Crows. And my auntie Pat, my mum's sister, played basketball for Australia in the '84 Olympics and '88. And I was obsessed with them. I idolised them and I wanted to be like them. Now, my main 2 sports was cricket. So I excelled quite early in cricket. So when I was 15, I was actually playing grade district or grade cricket at Southern Districts and did actually quite well. And I had the opportunity to captain the under-17 state team. The other guy in that photo at the same year, that's Chris Davies, who's the CEO of Port Power. He captained the under-19 state team. We played in the same team. Now, after I actually captained that side, I actually stopped playing cricket. And I focused on football, because at the same time I was tracking quite well. So my club was South Adelaide. I played down there, played league footy at a young age. And there was talk about getting drafted into the AFL. Now, for those who know football, Ash Manuel, did he end up playing AFL football? Anybody heard that name before? You can say it. No, he didn't. No, he wouldn't have, because it didn't happen. Now, in reflection, I had the skills, had the team aspect of the game, but what I lacked was the mental capacity to move forward from disappointments, whether that was in the moment in the games, or missing out selections, or poor performance, team performance, individual performance. I didn't have those tools to deal with disappointment. Now, for those who know the system, so we have the under-18 state team, which is the pathway to, I guess, the AFL. It's a really important competition to play in. I was in that squad for 3 years and never made it. That's actually hard to do. Really hard to do. But I put so much pressure on myself and it became an obsession. Now, as an adult, I've learned some skills that I wish I learned when I was younger. And that's one of the reasons why I started growing with gratitude. So after I didn't realise I probably wasn't going to play AFL, what am I going to do? So I ended up going to university, studying to be a primary school teacher, specialising in physical education. And at the end of 2003, I graduated and started teaching actually at the end of 2004, so it was 2004, I started teaching PE at Emmanuel Primary School, not far from here. Loved it, great school, had a really good time. Now, it came to 2010, and I came across this thing about positive psychology. And it just resonated with me. Like learning a skill in sport, you can learn to be a more resilient, happier person through practice. So things like practicing to be grateful, not just knowing what it is, but actually doing it. Kindness, practicing to be kind, actually doing it. Practicing empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Self-awareness, ownership, positive reflection, so thinking about the good things that happen. These are all things that can be practiced. And I wish I learned it at a young age, because it has a massive impact on my life as an adult. It helped me through some really challenging times. And that's what led me to really think, well, I wish I learned this when I was a child, or a teenager, even before that. So it was in 2014, I had one of those aha moments. Who's had those aha moments before in their lives? A few nods. Now, I had too, but I hadn't really done anything about it. This one was different. I thought, what if I combine what I know as a teacher with what I learned for my own benefit? I reckon I can not only help our school maybe implement a program, because that's what we're looking to do all the time, but other teachers help teach their students these skills, but also going out to schools and doing it myself. So, I came across this philosophy about the slight edge. Now, it's a book. Has anybody ever read the book called Slight Edge? Highly recommend it, particularly for teenagers or adults. So the Slight Edge philosophy is about doing seemingly insignificant things every day, compounded over time, can result in huge impact. So, like, I could do a gratitude activity today. It might not have much of an impact, but if I continue to do it day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, that's when it compounds to huge results. Now, this philosophy can be used in so many different areas of life, like skills in a sport. You could do 10 minutes today, but it's not going to have much of an impact. But you keep doing it every day over time, you'll eventually get better. And same with schoolwork. You don't have, just doing little things each day over time. So that's the philosophy I took with Growing with Gratitude. Every day for 2014 and 15, it was just a side project, or passion project, to be honest. And then I left teaching to start 2016 to this full time. So I've seen this little philosophy of the Slight Edge work really well, and it can translate across so many areas of our lives. So I want to give you an example of the Slight Edge in action. So I'll just use money. So you're going to get a money lesson. Who would have thought? So $20, if I save $20 right now, so if I started with 20, is that going to be life-changing? No, it's about to kick my teeth, but it's not going to be life-changing. But if I had $20 and saved $20 every day for 30 years, now that's a long time, but it builds up. If I put that in an investment account, making 8%, that ends up being, oops, forgot that. That ends up being $906,635. Now, that's a significant amount. So, young people, start saving. Because you don't have to do everything overnight. Just small steps can get to where you want to go. So, what I've learned with the emotional side of things is that just consistent practice, I've been able to build up my toolkit. So it's like going to training. So you're preparing yourself for challenges that come up. So knowing what works for you. So having a little gratitude practice is a really powerful thing. And what that does for me, I'll talk about, before I said how that's my mood shifter. So what I've learned to do, because I've practiced for so long, if I'm having a bad day, I'll use my self-talk, coming from a place of being grateful, to reframe the situation. One of the most powerful skills I've learned. So, like Sam mentioned before about, is it really that significant? So putting things in perspective. So sometimes the things that bother us, if we actually stop and think about it, isn't that bad? So what I'll say to myself, I say, look, today's just been one of those days, nothing's gone my way, a few things have annoyed me, but at the end of the day, it's actually not that bad. I'm going home to a warm place tonight. I've got a bed to sleep in, so reminding myself of things that sometimes I take for granted. And that helps me go from, say, a -3 back to a 0. That works for me. It's a really powerful skill. And that's one of the reasons for practicing gratitude. To train our mind to focus on the good things, because there's so much around us that we can be grateful for. Now, the World Health Organisation a few years ago put out a stat that Australia's the 3rd most depressed country in the world. But we have so much. We just need to focus on the good things that we do have, and we can practice it. So, let's skip over that slide. And another important skill I just want to focus on for a minute is empathy. Now, if you play sport here with students, particularly adults as well, what annoys you the most about playing your game of sport? What annoys you the most in the game? What frustrates you? What was that? Oh, I heard back to you. Umpires. Umpires. I heard left ears. It's good to have big ears sometimes. So, empathy is a really important skill. So let's just talk about umpires for a second. Now, who's ever umpired before here? Adults, students, who's umpired? Yeah. Now, I've umpired not much, a little bit over the years, and it's a hard job. Now, if we can put ourselves in the situation of the umpires, for instance, this is just an example of empathy, that's a good way to practice empathy. Now, Sam mentioned before about maybe a decision, it builds up and it makes you angry, and then you're prone to make poor decisions in the game, you get fired up, and your emotional state can get out of control. But if we can just go in with a sense of empathy, it comes down to self-awareness as well, understanding what grinds your gears. So if you know that an umpire makes you upset, or can frustrate, not upset, but frustrate you, and you know that, you can prepare yourself. So that's the self-awareness part. Knowing that I'm going into a game today, I could be frustrated by umpires' decisions, and you might have a strategy to deal with that. So it might be just a deep breath if you get a bad decision against you. But also going in, understanding that, hey, this is, I mean, it's pretty bit of a cliche, but if we don't have umpires, do we play? No. So try to put yourself in that situation, and the best thing you can do, I highly recommend you try it, ask in PE if you can actually umpire or referee, because then you get a bit of a feeling, putting yourself in that person's shoes, about how it is. So practicing empathy as well. Or, see if you can go and umpire a junior sports game if you can. It's not an easy job. So the point about that is that empathy can be practiced, putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Now, just finally, before we wrap up, now I just want to give you a bit of a takeaway that you could do at home as a family together. So who has a dice at home? Who has a dice? Yep, if you've got one dice, you can do this. If you don't have a dice, just Google virtual dice and you'll be able to bring it up on the screen. So, I want you to roll a virtual dice now. Think of a number, when you roll it, come up with a number between 1 and 6. Alright, ready? Go. Hold up any number of fingers between 1 and 6, off you go. Alright, I want you to have a look at what relates. If you had number 1, I want you to just reflect on that question. Now, you can just do it by yourself or share with the person next to you. So whatever number you've got, can people see that those at the back? Yep. So, just reflect on that question you've got. I'll give you 30 seconds and I'll talk about this activity. You can take a screen, you can take a photo of that if you like, of course. I'll just give you 30 seconds, just reflect on it, the number that you had. Alright, so, we'll just leave it there, but the purpose of an activity like this is just to get us thinking about, or as a parent, supporting your child in getting them to reflect on some of these things in their life. So instead of asking a random question like, how was your day? What's the normal response? Good, and off we go. Now I talk about this a lot, and I still do it as a fully grown man with my mum asks how I'm going. But if you just randomise, the dice is actually selecting a question for you. Now, these are just some ideas, but you could come up with a family about a question that you could ask relating to maybe gratitude, empathy, kindness, positive reflection. Because a lot of good things happen today, and sometimes not so good. As humans, what do we tend to focus on? Not so good, but it's that negativity bias. But we can train our brains to focus on the good things. And sometimes asking the right questions gets us to think about that. So this is just a bit of a randomised game that you could do once a week, every night if you like, but just something you could try. Now, last year I released a book. Now, I feel like Oprah here, but everyone will go home with a book tonight. So this will expand on what we've spoken about tonight, and hopefully will give you some more ideas within the book, tell you a bit more about what Growing with Gratitude is and the purpose of it. So we've got a book for one for every family. So on the way out tonight, we've got the boxes over there. I'm sure the student helpers or the students will be able to help distribute them. But I really wanted to give you a resource that you can take away and use. So if you've got any questions, more than happy to hang around afterwards, have a chat. But I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out tonight and invest time in yourself, but also your children as well. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. Thank you for sharing with us your strategies on positive reflection, empathy, self-awareness and ownership. We look forward to continuing to work with you this year. At Henley, we are very proud of our students' sporting achievements and we understand the commitment families make to support their students' journey. We've made some valuable community partnerships that have helped our students succeed and feel valued as a part of our community. Stuart McCulley is accredited athlete mentor and mental health first aider specialising in behaviour management and personal leadership delivery. He started his own company, Next Level Elite, mentoring to support some of SA and Australia's best up-and-coming athletes. He has worked with some of SA's best athletes, including Stuart O'Grady and Jess Stenson Nietrenko. Stuart has had very strong connection with Henley High School, running multiple leadership programs and working with individual athletes. Stuart prides himself on his ability to listen to individual needs, ask them questions to learn about how they tick, and share relevant information, strategies and techniques to support them in reaching specific goals. Last year, Stuart awarded our 12 national representatives with a free mentoring session. We are proud to announce Stuart will be offering the same service to our national representatives this year. Stuart and Next Level Elite are a great resource that may be of value to your student athlete, as I know I've valued working with him on my sporting journey. The Sports Academy and PE department began a new partnership with ISC Sport in 2021. We are extremely pleased about the new designs and high-quality products to support our student athletes. ISC Sport have kindly been donating vouchers to award winners at our annual Sports Academy and School Sport Presentation Celebration. Sports Academy students have the option to purchase a range of optional items. All the items purchased for the Sports Academy are made to order, and the next uniform ordering period will be open Monday, 25th of September.
In 2021, we opened the High Performance Centre, which has a strength and cardio training zone with industry standard equipment. Pushing Performance helped us create this amazing space for our Sports Academy and PE students. Pushing Performance are now our high-performance strength and conditioning consultants who work with all our Sports Academy classes for 7 sessions and provide our sports department staff with valued professional development. Pushing Performance has kindly sponsored our Sports Person of the Year award the last 2 years with a $300 cash voucher, and we are pleased to announce that they will be supporting this award again this year.
Aussie Athletes Agency is a compliant US college recruitment agency with over 400 years of combined experience. They produce countless success stories. They focus on educating our community on the US college pathway to deliver a personalised targeted service. They have supported us with the knowledge to guide our students wanting to pursue this pathway. At Henley, we have had 11 students being successful with a US college scholarship over the past 6 years. It is a very tricky process to navigate, and we appreciate all their support. As we are coming up to course counselling selections, we'll be having an information session for parents and students Monday 19th of June at 12:45 p.m. More information will come out from Jared Gillings, our Athlete Support Manager. Aussie Athletes Agency has supported one of our students with a $500 voucher for the past 2 years for the top US college prospect of the year. We are pleased to announce that they are committed to this voucher again this year. We would like to welcome Adrian Spencer to the stage. Adrian is the Adelaide United FC A-League Women's head coach. Adrian is also the Cedar College professional practice coach, Henley Sports Academy soccer coach, and Football Australia coach educator. He has played football at a semi-professional level within the National Premier League South Australia, coached football at school, NPL, Youth League and A-League levels, winning numerous titles along the way. After guiding Adelaide United A-League Women's to a maiden finals appearance in the Liberty A-League in 2021-2022, Adrian was recognised as Coach of the Year. He joins us to discuss failure within a sporting environment and the role resilience can play to assist growth in the face of adversity.
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. And I didn't realise that the sporting academies have been going since 1998. That was actually the year I finished high school. So it's been good to know and find out tonight that I've been out of school for 25 years. And you've done a very good job sitting and listening really well, so I'll try and move through this as quickly as I can. Just a little bit about myself, just to provide some context beyond that bio. I'm a high school teacher. I've been a high school teacher for over 20 years. My passions are football or soccer and education, and coaching allows me to explore both of those passions. Within soccer, I've had just about every job you can imagine. So I've been a volunteer, been a parent, been a coach, been a team manager. You think about it, you name it. I've done all of those roles within sport, within soccer before. And I see myself as always being on a continued journey of learning too. So part of that has been the importance of really positive mentors in my life. And especially in the sport of soccer, I've had some really good people that I've had around me and have helped guide me. And my parents have been mentors for me as well. And so I think it's great that you're here tonight and that you're engaged with your child's sporting endeavours. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about failure in sport. I'm a failed coach, and so I thought I'd just start with that. I've been involved in sport for a long time, as an athlete, administrator, like I said, a parent, a coach. My journey in sport has been full of a wide range of experiences and lived with significant failure at every step of the way. But I'm proud to say that despite all that, I'm still standing and I'm still ready to move forward with renewed optimism and take on the next challenge that awaits me. And tonight I'd like to offer you a small insight into how I do that and hopefully give you something to take away with you to talk with your children about with regards to any time they experience failure in sport. A few weeks ago, Adelaide United had their end of season awards evening, and at that night I spoke about the number 1 seeded Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA, who crashed out of the finals in the opening round, 4-1, and actually lost to the 8th seeded Miami Heat, and Miami is still in the final series. They've gone all the way there. It might seem like a strange thing to talk about, the NBA finals and the number 1 seed losing in the NBA finals at a soccer awards evening for professional male and female athletes, but what really struck me was the press conference that occurred after they got bundled out of the finals, where star Bucks player Giannis Antetokounmpo was asked if his season was a failure, given that his team finished with an NBA best 58-24 record and were upset by their less fancied opponents, and this is what he said.
I just asked Bud the exact same question, but I'm curious for you. Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. Okay, because I'm not you asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay, do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success, you know. And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it, you know. Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure? That's what you're telling me? No, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why are you asking that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not. Some days it's your turn, some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other team is going to win. And this year, somebody else is going to win. Simple as that. I'm going to come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball. You know, and hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failure. No, it was not. It was steps to it, you know, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one. You know, sorry that I didn't want to make it personal because you asked me the same question last year, and last year I was in the right mind space to answer the question back.
I just found that a remarkable post-match interview. I just sat there thinking about what I would talk about if I was a favourite and had just been bundled out of the finals, which actually happened to my team last season. And just a remarkable response, really interesting. And I think it challenges the way that we think about sports, especially at an elite level. There's been a lot of commentary since his post-match comments, both supporting and denouncing Jonas's views, and it certainly made me reflect on our most recent season in the A-League Women through a different lens than I probably originally did once the season had ended. We live in a 24-hour news cycle which has conditioned us so much to view everything as binary. So that there's this pervasive idea that win a championship or nothing is the norm. However, there's an obvious reality that only one team can win, only one team can win at all, and that hoisting trophies in any sport is extremely difficult. So being a failure might not be the right way to look at a season that falls short of expectation. And I just want to give you some context now about how my team failed this year in the A-League Women competition. We had a season of great disappointment. The reason why we categorise that as a season of great disappointment is because we fell well short of the goals that we set for ourselves at the beginning of the year. We came into the season carrying a great weight of expectation, coming off the back of the most successful season the club's ever had in its history. We finished third and made our maiden finals appearance. And as a result of that, we had really high motivation to go to the next level, to take the next step, and we had a genuine belief as a group that that's exactly what we would do. We had some key off-season acquisitions, we had some exciting young players as part of our group that were coming in to bolster the squad. And we had a really strong start to the year where we won 4 out of our first 5 games. We kept 4 clean sheets and we were on the trajectory that we thought our season was going to take. However, we ended the season really disappointingly. We finished 8th and we only won 1 of our final 13 matches. So some people would define that as a failure, and I'm comfortable if that's what they want to do, because I'm not someone who is worried about failure or even scared of it. In fact, I welcome and embrace failure and the opportunities that it can provide us with if we take the right mindset towards it. I didn't always think this way. It did require a bit of a changed mindset, and I actually learned a little bit about how to deal with failure and adversity through Lobsters.
A lobster is a soft, mushy animal that lives inside of a rigid shell. That rigid shell does not expand. Well, how can the lobster grow? Well, as the lobster grows, that shell becomes very confining. The lobster feels itself under pressure and uncomfortable. It goes under a rock formation to protect itself from predatory fish, casts off the shell, and produces a new one. Well, eventually, that shell becomes very uncomfortable as it grows back under the rocks. And the lobster repeats this numerous times. The stimulus for the lobster to be able to grow is that it feels uncomfortable. Now, if lobsters had doctors, they would never grow. Because as soon as the lobster feels uncomfortable, goes to the doctor, gets a Valium, gets a Percocet, feels fine. Never comes off its shell. So I think that we have to realize that times of stress are also times that are signals for growth. And if we use adversity properly, we can grow through adversity.
So in the video we just saw, Jewish Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky invites us into the world of the lobster by detailing how they grow. It's clear that a lobster can't grow at all unless it begins to feel uncomfortable first. I believe we're not too dissimilar to lobsters in regards to this, in that we cannot grow either unless we experience discomfort first. That is, unless we're pushed outside of our comfort zone, unless we fail at times. Rabbi Tversky goes on to say that times of stress are also times that are signals for growth. In short, with the right mindset, I feel anyone can grow through adversity. This is great news for anyone that's involved in sport, as you all are, who's sitting in front of me here today, because, especially at a high level, sport's full of challenges and adversity. It's full of times of stress, it's full of failure. But instead of seeing these challenges in a negative light, I believe the path to success lies in supporting our budding young sportsmen and women to work together with them to help them see moments of failure as opportunities to grow. How might we do this, you might ask? I think it's about being supportive of them and teaching them how to be resilient when they experience failure in their sporting endeavours. So, for me, resilience is the ability to adapt or rebound quickly from change and from adversity. In other words, being resilient means being able to pick yourself up and go again when something in life knocks you down. Some people can be knocked down by what life has thrown at them and return stronger than ever before. A resilient athlete works through challenges by using personal resources, strengths, and other positive capacities of psychological capital, such as hope, optimism, and self-efficacy. Overcoming a crisis by resiliency is often described as bouncing back to a normal state of functioning. Being resilient is also positively associated with happiness. A major point in learning resilience is to be able to take perspective on things. In moments of stress, it might be useful to place your individual situation into a bigger context to get a grasp on its real severity or lack thereof. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. Athletes that are resilient often show a positive attitude. They don't label failure as something negative. Instead, they see it as a helpful feedback and motivation to work more and get better. Getting in touch with other people, helping them out, and overall establishing positivity in life are important steps in the process of learning resilience. So my challenge to any aspiring athletes sitting with us today, or parents of athletes in the room, is to flip your thinking on adversity. Rise every time you fall. View failure for what it is, what it really is, a step on the road to success. During times of stress, stand up and be strong, as times of stress are signals for growth. Be optimistic about the difficulties that come your way by seeing them as opportunities rather than challenges. And be willing not only to accept change and failure, but to embrace it so you can grow through adversity as your future sporting endeavours unfold. Regardless of how anyone chooses to define our most recent season, what's most important to me moving forward is that lessons are learned from our shared experiences. We may have fallen short of what we set out to achieve, and the pain and harshness of this reality is still very real and it burns inside me to this very day. But it doesn't mean that everything my team and my staff did last year during our season was for nothing. It's a year's worth of physical and mental sacrifice, all amounted to thousands of wasted hours. I refuse to believe that. Would our time have been better off spent in some other endeavour? Again, I refuse to believe that. Was our season a failure? For me, that doesn't really matter. It's not so much about the label that you put on a performance, it's more about what you can learn from that performance and then use going forward. So our challenge as athletes or parents of athletes is to make sure that, moving forward, past seasons, past matches, past performances aren't a waste. That for me would be far greater a failure than any specific result in isolation. So collectively, I encourage you to ensure that every experience within your child's sporting journey, with all its trials and tribulations, ups and downs, positives and negatives, counts for something and becomes an important step in your child's ongoing journey to achieve the ultimate success that they're after. Failures can't be in vain, rather they need to serve as touch points or stepping stones that you can reflect back on and learn from later. They need to be used to move you back towards the direction you want to go in, to drive the behaviours and the standards that you wish to exhibit daily, and to motivate you to be better after what you've persevered through. If you're able to do this, then there is no doubt in my mind that as an individual or as a team, as a collective, you'll be well positioned to succeed in the future. It's because of this mindset and approach to failure that I actually now look forward with great anticipation and optimism to the many challenges that lay ahead and the collective work my team will undertake this coming season to be better than we previously were. In a recent article written by Dr. Olivia Hurley for Thrive Global, 8 tips or strategies were outlined to assist athletes in overcoming setbacks, defeat, deselection, injury, etc. The tips shared could be best described as transferable skills and mainly centred around the concept of resilience, which I spoke about before. I'd like to share those tips with you now and then try and put them in some context for you as parents. So I think the first one's been up there for a while. Yep. So the first one is have the courage to be imperfect. Too often in life we aim for perfection. As parents and supporters, we should not recommend athletes use this term. Instead, we should work together to help them produce personal bests, help them to aim for performance excellence, but not expecting perfection. Tip 2 is have a positive outlook. This refers to being open to new experiences, new ways of doing things, and not being afraid to be open to growth and learning, especially in times of difficulty, in times of challenge, and in times of failure. Know what you want to achieve, why, and how. It's important to be clear about what you'd like to achieve, why you want to achieve it, which is something that's often neglected, and how you plan to go about achieving it. Having a plan, a process, is really important because that's what keeps you on track in times of failure and disappointment. Seek out social support. Don't be afraid to ask for help. The most successful athletes, teams, business people, indeed performers of any kind, most often have a team of people who help them to reach their targets. And as parents, you form an important part of that team. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of confidence and strength. See your decisions as active choices. Too often we use the word sacrifices to describe the decisions we make to achieve the goals we set for ourselves. While the effort required to achieve many goals in life are physically and mentally challenging, they are active choices you make, not sacrifices. So see them as such, not something you're being forced to do by others. Take control and responsibility. Take control of your feelings, thoughts and actions. Don't allow the remarks and actions of others to significantly impact you. Take that power back. Have some helpful self-talk phrases ready to say to yourself to remind you that you do not have to let another person make you feel a certain way, especially if they're being unkind or judgmental regarding your life goals. Focus on your own personal development. We often make too many comparisons between ourselves and others. What someone else has achieved in life or in sport might not be right for you. Focus on yourself, on your own performance, as that is all that you can really control. And finally, view setbacks as opportunities for growth. Try to focus on post-traumatic growth, as sometimes it's called, rather than post-traumatic stress. You can learn valuable lessons from difficult experiences in life. Being able to cope with the physical and mental pain of such situations allows you to gain strength from these experiences. You can take these lessons into other challenging situations you experience to remind you that you can cope with adversity when required to. So much of those lessons from the elite have focused on how athletes and perhaps coaches involved in sporting teams might be able to flip their thinking with regard to failure. I'd like to end now just by listing how they might appear for you as parents. In short, how you might be able to implement and assist your children through their journey in sport. So reiterate the message that there is no such thing as perfection in sport. I think it's really important that you use this language around your children. Try to provide positive reinforcement where you can. I'm involved in a lot of coach education with Football SA and Football Australia, and when I ask coaches to review their coaching performances, the first 2, 3, 4, 5 things out of their mouth are all negative or constructive comments. And so I often find myself asking these coaches, did you actually do anything good? Was there anything positive about what it is you just did as part of the course? So positive reinforcement, really important. Support achievable goal setting. Again, as a parent, it's one of the most important things you can do. Are your child's goals that they're setting for themselves achievable? And if they're not, can you support them and help them find some achievable goals to work towards? Encourage your child to seek support from coaches, teachers, mentors, others. Like I mentioned before, it's not a sign of weakness to look out for and seek out social support. So really encourage your child to do that. Try and be supportive of your child's choices, even if at times you think in a sporting context they're making a mistake. One of the greatest joys I've had this year is, as a coach, just being able to watch my youngest daughter start playing football at Adelaide Uni. And it's been great because I've actually had to physically myself take a step back, bite my lip, not say anything, and just let her teammates, and the coaches working with them do their job. And it's been a very humbling experience for me as a parent. And going on from that, it's okay to let your child make mistakes. The last person my daughter wants to hear from about how she's going with her soccer and her football was me. I don't think she likes the fact that I coach women professionally in the sport that she has now started playing. 2 to go. I think it's really important to celebrate personal bests, okay? However you choose to do that, it's completely up to you as a family, but I think the significance of personal bests in life can often be overshadowed by others, by competition, by what someone else is doing. And so it comes hand in hand with setting those goals, those achievable goals, but celebrating personal bests is something that I would encourage you all to do with your children. And the last thing, which I hope is my take-home message from this evening, is just to encourage your child to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. So that can be really difficult because, like I said, we live in quite a binary society. It's very judgmental, in particular with regards to sport. But if you can encourage that shift in mindset, maybe it needs to occur in yourself first before you can translate that across to your children or the athletes in your family. But embracing failure as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity for growth, will be a big step, I believe, towards setting your child up for success, both on and off the pitch, moving forward. So thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all the best for the remainder of your year. And I just ask that in times of adversity, you remember the lesson of the lobster. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. We would now like to welcome Ms. Nutt and our special guest back to the stage with some final questions from you for Adrian, Ash and Zed. On behalf of Lauren, Merve and myself, we would like to thank you for being here this evening, as we appreciate all the support from our parents and caregivers.
I'm conscious of time. time, and thank you so much for the questions that have been posted. Obviously, we're going to share some information after this evening tomorrow with you about what the presenters have spoken about, but also get some feedback. So I'm just going to ask two of the questions. So the first one, how do parents help students who have great accountability to their coach in sport but aren't putting in the effort or being accountable academically or at home?
Great question, and it's one that actually does come up a lot, especially in the literature with dual career athletes. So dual career can often imply two sports. So you might have a son or daughter that's a state level runner and a state level footballer, as an example. Sorry for my football example. Die-hard footy fan. So in this example, that's an example of dual career, but dual career can also be athlete, any sport, as well as academic commitment. So in school, as an example, what's the advice? If your child is over-investing in their sport at the expense of their school, it's not easy to rebalance that overnight. And so the lesson here would be about graduated exposure to change. And so one thing might be simply, there's 168 hours in a week, and if they're spending 20 hours on their sport and really no hours on their school, can we just try and shift that by 1 hour over that course of that week? And if they can do that for a week or a fortnight, then can we make it 2 hours? And eventually it's this form of graduate exposure to change, which generally find has a much more sustained impact on behaviour change, especially when it comes to achievement domains such as sport and school. So that would be my advice for any families that are in that situation.
Awesome, thank you, Sam. All right, just to the next one, because this has been a popular one that's been liked. Are there any apps or groups that our kids will find useful and engaging to complement their sport instead of scrolling through mindless social media networks?
We were just actually talking about who's going to answer that. But I don't use apps and that sort of thing, so I'm not sure really any tools. But I know that you've got, I think probably the best way is to Google search apps. I know the Resilience Project have an app. Do you know any others there?
So we've just published a paper, we're about to publish a paper that's looked at the top 40 apps for young people when it comes to mental health and sport. So that might be something that, Sam, we can share with your team. I can't recite all 40 apps at the moment, but in that paper, we can actually identify frequency, the most popular apps, what types of mental or wellbeing outcomes will actually improve, with prolonged use of the apps will actually improve certain psychosocial outcomes. And so these are things like confidence, but there are also things like efficacy, they're things like self-esteem. There are other psychometric properties related to, just off the top of my head now, well-being, resilience, and yeah, there's a number of others. But that might be of use as a tool because you don't need to look at all 40, but you might just find one that works for you in a given age, in a given environment. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, because I know it's hard to answer questions on the spot, but we'll look to share those with you when Sam shares them with us. But I'm going to be like Oprah now, and I am going to thank Ash, Sam, and Adrian, and they're going to be receiving a 25-year beanie for the Sports Academy once they come in. So, so thank you very much for being here tonight. I know we've gone over time, but again, we're obviously learning. This is our first parent forum, but we really appreciate you being here and supporting your child's journey, so thank you. Oh, on your way out, actually, Chad will be Oprah now, and he will give you the Growing with Gratitude book. So thanks again for coming along. We really appreciate it.